Hey, this is Joe. We have a 2014 RAV4 with a 2.5 liter engine. And in this video, I'm going to show you how to clean your mass airflow sensor. This is something that needs to be done. It's a very delicate operation, and you want to follow explicit instructions or you could damage your mass airflow sensor. So let's get started. The first thing we want to do is we want to remove the negative battery post or terminal from the battery. You don't ever want to work on any electronic systems on your vehicle with a live battery running in your vehicle. So let's go ahead and disconnect that negative terminal. You're going to need a 10mm wrench. And we want to remove that negative post. Don't let it touch. Put it down on the side. Now that your battery is disconnected, it is safe now to work on the electrical components in your vehicle. Let me reposition the camera, show you where the mass airflow sensor is, and then I'm going to proceed to show you how to clean this. Once we disconnect the battery, we want to find the mass airflow sensor. So what you want to do is look behind the battery. This is your air box right here. And right off of the air box, there's a wire connector right here and a little black square sensor, and there's two screws on that. That is your mass airflow sensor. What this does is it measures how much air is coming into the air box and then directed into the intake system. And this is very important because it uses how much airflow goes into your intake system, so it knows how much fuel to meter in to the engine for proper engine operation. If this sensor becomes damaged or quit working, your fuel economy is going to drop and your engine could run roughly. So what we want to do is every so often you want to clean this. Let me show you how to clean this. First of all, we want to disconnect the electrical connector from the mass airflow sensor. And that is right at the back of the mass airflow sensor. You find the little connector, and it looks like there are 4 wires on here. And you want to be very careful in disconnecting this. You don't want to break the connector. We push down on that connector, which is right here, right on the top. And sometimes you may have to push pretty hard. And we're going to take a screwdriver and very gently pry that connector off. That push button is right here, and it's spring loaded, so you want to push on it and gently pry that off. Just set this off to the side, and you'll notice there's 2 little cross point screws on this sensor. So what we want to do is get our cross point screwdriver. No, it's not a Phillips screwdriver. Phillips is a brand name. Technically it's a cross point screwdriver. And we want to remove those 2 screws. Hang on to the screw. You do not want to drop it. Once you get the screw, I like to use a magnetic tray so we won't lose any screws or components that we will eventually have to put back on the vehicle. You can pick up these magnetic trays from Harbor Freight for real cheap. You put your hardware in, put it on the car, keeps the screws from falling down behind something, and then you can't get at it. So let's go ahead and pull the other screw from the mass airflow sensor. Now what you want to do is very gently, there's an O-ring on the bottom of this square box here. You want to pull that out, and if you look very carefully, there's a tiny little wire in there. That is your mass airflow sensor right there. Now you don't want to stick a brush in there. You don't want to blow compressed air in there. Here's the sensor location right there. You don't want to touch it with your fingers. You don't want to brush it with a brush. You don't want to blow compressed air on it. This is a very delicate instrument. And what we want to do at this point is we want to clean it, and then we want to let it dry for at least 15 minutes before we put it back in. Now, what do you want to clean it with? Let me get the proper cleaner and show you what we clean it with. Okay, what we have here is we have a can of mass airflow sensor cleaner. That's the only cleaner you want to use on this sensor. You don't want to use WD-40. You don't want to use carburetor cleaner. You don't want to use throttle body cleaner. You only want to use mass airflow sensor cleaner. If you use anything else, that could leave a residue on that little filament, and it will burn it out, and then you're stuck with about a $400 replacement. So you don't want to use anything but mass airflow sensor cleaner on this. How do you clean it? Shake up your can, hold your mass airflow sensor to where you see the little filament, and then from 6 to 8 inches away, you then want to spray the sensor. And then what you want to do is set this down and let it dry for about 15 minutes before you put this back in. So we'll let that set, and we'll come back in 15 minutes, and then I'll show you how we're going to put this back together. It's been 15 minutes, and we let the mass airflow sensor sit. Now what we're going to do, make sure the O-ring is still on the mass airflow sensor. Take your finger and wipe around the hole, and very gently reinsert the mass airflow sensor in till the O-ring seats. And also make sure your screw holes are lined up properly. Now we can take and screw the screws back into the mass airflow sensor. We can now take the screws and we can fasten down the mass airflow sensor. Hang on to those screws, you don't want to drop them. Gently screw those screws back in the holes. Okay, and while the battery is still disconnected, you want to take your wire harness, make sure it is clean, and very gently slide the connector till it clicks back on the mass airflow sensor. At this point, we're done cleaning. We can now take the negative terminal. We can put that back on the negative battery post. And now we can tighten back up the battery terminal. Make sure that your battery terminals are tight and don't move. And that's how you clean the mass airflow sensor on a 2014 RAV4 2.5 liter engine. Hope you enjoyed this video, and we'll see you next time.